Cal, welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm so excited to be here.
This is like this is the best part of my job. I get to sit down with my friends and have conversations and learn things. And before we hit record, I already learned something about the physical product space. The I don't even know what you would call it. What do you call it? Physical products.
Just products.
Products. Yeah.
I
I live
know.
in such
It
a
is
digital
physical
world.
products.
I'm like,
Yeah.
ebooks, courses.
Yeah.
All right. I want to dive in, but of course, we read your bio. You have an incredible background. You have an incredible story. And for those of you listening who have listened to my story at all recently, you know that I went through an ectopic pregnancy back in September. And Kelly and I had we met in person about like 2 years ago. Our paths had crossed a couple times, lots of mutual friends, but we met in person about 2 years ago. And through the horrible experience that I went through in September, some of those mutual friends reminded me that you actually went through something really similar. And so Kelly has just been one of the most incredible girlfriends the last couple months. And it was in such a weird roundabout way that we got connected again. But in sharing your story and being there for me, I can't thank you enough. Like you just have been such a rock. I love you.
It's crazy how like things are placed in your path for like a purpose and a reason. And I feel like I don't know, I met you, we connected over grief, and I just feel like I've known you forever. And so it was such a beautiful connection in such a weird, strange way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love you back.
Yeah. So I would like to go back just a little bit because grief is a really big part of Cayla Gray, and one of the reasons that you actually finally took the leap and really decided to go all in on this dream. So can you just take us back to where that started, the name Cayla Gray, all of it?
Yeah, totally. I'll go back way back. So it all kind of started way back in the day when I was in Wisconsin. So I live in Arizona now, but I was born in Wisconsin, spent a ton of time in nature. I was always a little bit beauty obsessed. And when I landed my first job as an assistant buyer of fragrances, I was in heaven. I just love the way that like fragrances tell a story and are so closely tied to memories for people. Like the smell, this is going to sound very Wisconsin, Midwest, but like the smell of an old fashioned, like
Oh, yeah.
it makes me think of a poker game. Like the smell of lilacs, like makes you think of your grandma. Like the scent of smoke will like remind you of a crackling fire in the middle of a snowy winter. And so like the tie between scent and memory was like so strong, and I've always really noticed that. And so to get my dream job of an assistant buyer of fragrances and like being able to stand in a fragrance closet of hundreds and hundreds of beautiful perfumes, I was, oh my gosh, I was so in heaven. I always wanted to start my own business. My dad was an entrepreneur, but as I worked my way up the corporate ladder, it was really hard to kind of leave the steady paycheck. So
Yeah.
I moved from like buying to like then management of buying to then, senior leadership positions. Really have done everything on the side of retail operations. So it was just hard to walk away. It was just hard to walk away from the fatty bonuses.
Yeah.
Um, but in 2010, I moved to Arizona. I met my husband and wanted to start trying for a family. I had really never been the girl though that like knew she was meant to have kids, to have children. I actually was never really sure that I wanted to have them to begin with. I always felt that there was like so much pressure on women to get married and have kids. And that always rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. But when I met my husband, and I also saw my sister have her first baby, like I was there when she gave birth. It
Yeah.
literally shifted stuff for me. And so my husband and I started to try for a family. So in 2017, I found out I was pregnant. I was so excited. I was like, okay, I'm meant to be a mom. Like this is meant for me. So I spent hours dreaming about the baby and the future for this baby. And but at the end of the day, I ended up suffering from a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. I lost the baby and was literally a minute away from losing my life. I know you know how that feels. And then it happened again in 2018, actually. So lost both of my tubes, lost both of the babies, and almost lost my own life. I was just devastated. Spent a ton of time in therapy, but it was really after like those two moments that I realized life is so short and it's not guaranteed, and every single moment is one to be grateful for. And I knew that it was time to start my dream business. So I started working on my business. I really wanted to create clean luxury fragrances because I remember when I was pregnant finding out if I'm a beauty obsessed, perfume obsessed person, and like I couldn't wear any of these things. And it just
Yeah.
like blew my mind at that toxicity of fragrance. And so I'm like, I'm obsessed with fragrance. There's clearly a gap in the market here. let's work on building a company. And so I also named the company Cayla Gray because it was going to be the name of the first baby that we lost. So I really wanted a way to like honor the heartbreak that we went through by like creating products and putting beautiful new memories out into the world for other people.
I love that. It's so cool to see too, because when you first started, we only knew each other, or I knew of you through the internet just because of mutual friends. So I remember watching even like the first iteration of your packaging. I
Yeah.
remember people posting it and shouting you out. And to go from nothing to a physical product to me is just
Yeah.
so crazy. Because again, I'm in a digital world. So we do digital education. I feel like anyone can just jump on Zoom, teach something, slap together a course, film a couple videos. I'm not saying it's easy, but right, you don't have to like,
Yeah.
there's no one else involved. When you're
Yeah.
building out a physical product, you're working on the packaging and the logo design, and you're dealing with inventory and shipment and distribution, and there's just so many different elements. So to watch you essentially from the sidelines go from this crazy stupid idea, as I like to say, to having product in hand. Of course, the one I have next to me right now is the money candle. I have Cayla Gray stuff all over the house, but this one is the money candle, which just smells so good. Coconut and salty caramel. It's so good.
Love it.
But to go from that to having physical products, can we go back for 1 second? You sort of glazed over something, and I think there's a huge piece missing. So you said, whether you were pregnant or trying to get pregnant, you couldn't use a lot of the over-the-counter fragrances because of the toxicity. Do you feel that there's a gap in even the education of that? Because I feel like a lot of women or men don't even know that there's such toxic products, and we just spray things and walk through clouds of smell in the air and roll things on our body and use creams. So did that come up because you were trying to get pregnant? Where was that like awareness?
Yeah, really, the awareness literally came when I found out I was pregnant and I started doing research. When you first find out you're pregnant, you're popping open like all of these what to expect when you're expecting books and like all of this different stuff. And there's like lists of things that you shouldn't be eating or you shouldn't be putting on your body. And I was just surprised. I had absolutely no idea. And I thought to myself, okay, so we clean up our act when we're having a baby, but like we don't do this in our day in and day out life. It was just really surprising to me. And then I started going down the rabbit hole of like trying to understand why. I mean, at the end of the day, we all understand why companies don't make things clean. It costs them margin, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it was shocking to me that there was no accountability in the US. And so what I mean by that is nobody's regulating what really the beauty space is in terms of what's healthy and what isn't, and what's harmful and what isn't. So I'll give you an example. European beauty standards restrict over 1,300 ingredients in beauty products, whereas the
Wow.
US only restricts 11.
Oh,
Um, and even when like I say that like we are a clean fragrance company, nobody's regulating me on what clean means. Nobody. So
interesting.
literally I can tell you I'm a clean beauty company and no one's holding me as a brand founder accountable to what that means, which
Wow.
also blows my mind. It's greenwashing essentially, and I'm even doing it. I'm, saying I'm clean, but it's the verbiage that for people to understand that we are healthier for you, but nobody's regulating me, and that blows my mind. And so one thing that we wanted to do, which wasn't easy to do, is disclose all of the ingredients in the word fragrance in our products.
Mm,
Which no, it's not required. Fragrance is actually considered intellectual property
wow.
in the US. And so no fragrance company is required to disclose their ingredients. Same
Wow.
with like all bath and body products that you see. You'll see the word fragrance in a list of all of the other different ingredients, but there could be thousands of ingredients within that word fragrance.
Yeah.
And so we worked really hard to find the right manufacturers for us to be able to disclose exactly the ingredients that are in the word fragrance. So
Wow.
everything is listed on our website because to be an integrity, like I want you to know what you're putting on your body and I want
Yeah.
you to make that decision yourself. I shouldn't be making that decision for you. So
Yeah.
it's a wild world out there. And yeah, just it's been interesting to try to navigate it as a brand founder too.
Yeah. Well, even with packaging, we see companies that we've seen for many, many years in Target, Walmart, whatever, CVS, and they just sort of increase and elevate their packaging to be a little bit more neutral colors,
Yeah.
more just cardboard as opposed to plastic. And then
Yeah.
it gives off the appeal or the feel of like, oh, this is clean, this is organic, but really it's the same things, just repackaged
Mm-hmm.
with a new mask. They do the same thing in the food industry. So back when I
Yeah.
was in health and fitness, quote unquote natural ingredients could be like thousands of things, but most packaged food at some point on the label will say natural ingredients, and you have no idea what it is, which is like really disgusting.
It really is.
Yeah,
It's scary.
it
Like we're
is.
being duped every day of our lives. It's
Yeah. I
crazy.
want to know what I'm putting in my body and on my body.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. Yes.
Crazy. Just stay away from packaged goods. Well, while we're on this topic, are all essential oils clean or no?
So that's another kind of a myth. Just because something is called natural doesn't mean that um, it's utilized in the proper way. So
Mm.
an example of that would be it's called the percentage usage that's in the products that you're using. So if a company is putting tea tree, let's say, in a product, but they're using it at too high of a percentage that is safe for bodily use, it could actually be toxic.
Wow.
Or like, I mean, think about like arsenic is a natural thing. It's
Sure.
clearly toxic. Too much water can be toxic. And so I don't, it's hard for customers to navigate. And at this point in time, you just got to do what you feel in your gut is best for you and try to do research. It's overwhelming though. I mean, even me as a brand founder, I try as often as I can to, dive into research studies and all of the things and keep up on all of the things that are coming out. And it's a lot, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So really it's just about researching and doing what feels comfortable for you at the end of the day.
Yeah. So with your business, how do you even start? Like, do you have a chemist? Do you go to a lab? What's research and development? Are you mixing the scents yourself? Do you have a scientist? Like, do you wear goggles? What does that look like? Tell me
a little
everything,
bit,
Lab
a
Kelly.
little bit of all of it. So like behind me, if you're on
Yeah, I
YouTube, you
see
can
it.
see I have like a full wall of fragrance notes. And so up there, there's things like balsam, cedarwood, patchouli, vanilla, white grapefruit, like a whole bunch of different scents. And so I spend time mixing them together, using my fragrance wheel. I don't think I have one here with me, but like mixing them together and learning like what things work well together, what things are just kind of like repellents to each other. I
Sure.
took a ton of perfumery courses to kind of teach
So
myself and
cool.
learn, yeah, the chemistry behind everything. So what my process is essentially I create the first iteration of a fragrance that I want to create. I send those samples off to, they're called fragrance houses. Fragrance houses is where all the chemists and perfumers are, like the master perfumers are. I send off those samples to those fragrance houses, and they basically create the fragrance in a way that's cleanly formulated that can be mass produced. I can't mass produce perfume oil in my house, in
Right.
my manufacturing facility. Like I can't do that. And I'm not a chemist. So when I tell you that our product is clean and we want to disclose all of the ingredients, I need to work with a chemist to make sure that it's safe for your body. So we send all of that off to fragrance houses. We get a couple different samples back to try to get as close as they possibly can to my sample. And then they go into production and send me like these massive drums of fragrance oil. And then I use those fragrance oils to make all my products. So whether it's Bath and Body stuff or it's candles or it's, our main product is perfume. That's kind of my process.
Wow. Do you have like, did you have a nose? Have you trained your nose? And like, do you have the type of nose that you could walk in, smell someone else's perfume and like, ooh, that smells like 50% this and 10% of that. And there's a dash of here and dash of there. Like, do you have a nose?
I feel like I've always had a nose,
Yeah.
super sensitive, like which can also be to a fault. Like if
Yeah.
something's off, it bothers me, and like I can't. Well, I have ADD, so I can't focus normally anyway. But then you put a funky smell in there, and I'm like, okay, I just can't. I can't focus right now.
Yeah.
So I've always had a good nose, and it's getting better and better the more I'm learning about different ingredients. I mean, there's ingredients out there that I've never even heard of that I'm diving into and learning about. There's like a new rose that I just discovered at a botanical garden, like a couple hours east here in Arizona, and I'd never heard of it before, and it smells so good. So like now I'm diving into
Wow.
understanding like the origin of that ingredient and how I can use that in the future in my scents. And so every single day I'm learning and evolving and sharpening my nose.
Wow. So something like rainwater, I feel like that's a popular candle, or like fresh. What
Yeah.
like what is there an ingredient mixture, a formula that just is across the board? So any company is really taking an iteration of like rainwater. There's certain things that you're going to put together to make that smell.
Yeah, like for example, there's certain like fresh florals that can be used in a scent like that, or like a super fresh like cedarwood or sandalwood, or like a jasmine, or a rose. Like rose has the cleanest, crispest like scent ever. And so like diluting that so that you mix that with a couple of other like super fresh raw ingredient scents can create what you think is like ozone or like fresh grass or like any of the things that we just love walking around in our neighborhoods day to day.
Yeah.
I think that like we just created an orange blossom scent that it's literally, we took an orange blossom flower and distilled it down to get to the fragrance oil. And so you can create iterations of really anything in nature. And really anything honestly human made too is
Yeah.
something that can be synthetically created in a safe way. It's so exciting.
So when you're Mad Lab Kelly in your house right here with your notes behind you and you're playing with your wheel and you're doing your things, what does a typical timeline look like from, you're kind of mixing things together to it goes off to the lab to the chemist to it comes back and then all of a sudden it's now a packaged candle or perfume or roller? What's the timeline?
When I first started, it was around 9 months. I've gotten my
Wow.
process pretty streamlined. So it's 6 months now. So I can get something up and running within 6 months if the fragrance house is able to nail my sample. Otherwise, it takes 3 to 4 weeks for every sample iteration. And that can essentially extend my timeline. But luckily, in my job before, my last position was I was a senior director of sourcing and procurement. I stood up a domestic sourcing division for the company. So like I negotiated and found manufacturers every day, all day. And so that really gave me a leg up when I started my own business to quickly hone in and narrow down the manufacturers that I felt were stable enough to award
Yeah.
business to. So that helped me like be more efficient in getting product up and running. But yeah, 6 to 9 months is kind of typical for a new creation, a new scent at least.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It's not that long in the grand scheme of things, but I look at your business and it's not that old and you have a lot of products, you have a lot of SKUs, you have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of scents. Is it just because you're experienced? I
Well,
mean,
and we release one new scent every quarter. And so we're perpetually,
working on the
constantly
next thing.
creating a new scent.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like part of the planning process.
Yeah. Crazy. Okay, we went off on so many different tangents, but I'm like just so curious to learn all of this because I know nothing about it. When you're talking about a product, you keep saying manufacturer. Do you have
Yeah.
multiple manufacturers? Is that something you would suggest to like to have a fallback? Or is that like not nice that you don't want to have multiple? Do they know that you have multiple if you do? Is that something that's talked about in the industry? So someone who wants to create a physical product, what would you say?
I would say 100% you need a second source for your manufacturers, not only the manufacturers, so the people that are actually manufacturing, creating your product, but sources for the different raw materials. So an example of that would be if I'm creating a candle, I have several different sources for glass vessels.
Mm,
And thank goodness I did, because in 2020, there was a major glass shortage and I was scrambling. Everybody in the candle industry was scrambling and had to get scrappy on where to find glass to sustain their sales and their business. And so I always suggest to at least have two different raw material manufacturers and sources for every type of raw material and manufacturing process that you have. Not only because supply chain issues are inevitable, especially in the new world that we're living in now. And second, it's a good practice to have because one raw material supplier may give you a cost increase every
mm,
single February of every single year to keep up with inflation. The other manufacturer may not. And so you can kind of use those two against each other to negotiate your cost back down to where it needs to be.
yeah.
So always understanding like where you stand in terms of cost versus the other sources that are out there in the market is super important
Yeah.
because you don't want to be taken advantage of at the end of the day in a way that it'll affect your margins.
Yeah. So in my world, and a lot of the people listening to the podcast, we have a lot of coaches and service-based entrepreneurs. They're spending, it's interesting. We get into coaching because we love coaching. And then when you're a
Yeah.
solopreneur, you actually end up sometimes, especially when you're scaling your business, not doing that much coaching. You're doing a lot of managing and marketing and all the other departments. So where do you feel like you spend most of your time?
Oh, I when I first started, I would spend most of my time on social media,
Yeah.
and I hated it. Hated it because it felt like well, I mean, it's what everyone's experiencing. Like you spend all of this time on social media, things but algorithms and all of this stuff, like your stuff may or may not be shown, and it just gets frustrating at the end of the day. And so I learned quickly that that was something that I wanted to outsource for, so I could really focus on my sweet spot, which is operations, like making the most cost effective, efficient processes and products that I possibly could, in order to be able to afford to hire people to do things that I don't want to do. I
Yeah.
also think I struggled with it because marketing is not a skill set of mine. And so I knew when I started my business, that's where I was going to have to hire out in order for me to scale quicker than it would if I was doing it on my own. So I would say marketing and social media was where I used to spend most of my time. Today, because the world is very different, it really is with negotiating, talking to sources, finding better sources, tracking and just doing a ton of analytical stuff,
Yeah.
to try to make better decisions in my business is where I spend most of my time now. And
Yeah.
networking.
I was gonna say,
Networking is,
I was gonna say networking. I feel like you're always at events and doing photo
yeah,
shoots, and yeah, you again, you have a product to bring to places.
yeah.
Do you see that as is it powerful when you have a product to go to events and have a pop-up table and be a sponsor? Do you find that that has good conversion, not so great conversion? Because also your product is a very like, I'm not going into a store to buy a candle. It's more like I'm in the store and I see it and I like it, so I buy it. So do you find that pop-ups at events for you convert?
Yeah, so I think the benefit to being at markets, whether it's trade shows or pop-up markets where it's direct to consumer, is a great way for me. It's a great way to network while making money. Because you have, right, like you have your
Yeah.
product there, you're there talking to everybody, whether or not they buy something, like you made that instant connection with someone who could be a customer at some point in time, or somebody who could refer somebody else to your product if they're not somebody who's like really into perfume or candles. And I think it's a great place to educate people on the things that they are putting on their body that maybe they want to like think about. It's shocking that most people don't really even understand
Yeah.
that some of the things that they're putting on themselves can be toxic. And so I find that markets are one of my most value added time spent because I'm networking and making money at the same time.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's also, I don't want to say a gap, but a barrier to entry for someone seeing your product online versus being able to actually smell it in person?
Huge gap. So that is something that that fragrance in general has like really, they've been slower on the online space
Yeah.
than any other type of cosmetic product in beauty, just in the beauty space in general, because people want to smell it. And
Yeah. We need
so
smell-o-vision.
you need to smell it. You need smell vision. And so something that's super important to us is like I wanted to create what we call our discovery kit, which has one little mini sample of every one of our scents in it as an easy entry point for people to try all of our products. And then literally they get the cost of that discovery kit in, like they get a credit for that cost that can then convert into a full size fragrance.
Mm,
So once they find the scent that they love, the kit is essentially free. So it's an easier way for people to discover scent. And I feel
yeah.
like because customer shopping patterns have changed so much and people are really purchasing more things online, they're learning a little bit more about the types of scents they do like. They do know
Yeah.
that they love patchouli or that they love, a specific kind of jasmine or a rose or like iris, like whatever the scent is that they love. They're learning a little bit more what they like and making that online purchase easier.
Yeah.
Um, and we also have return policies. Like if you get something in the mail you don't love, send it back to us. We'll exchange it for something else for 100% free. We'll pay
Yeah.
for the return shipping back. Like it's important to us to stand by our product because you never, and scent can kind of change on people's skin too. So I
Yeah.
want to make sure that people feel comfortable that they have options if they find something that they don't really love.
Yeah. Do you find that you have a lot of repeat customers that are like restocking?
Yeah. So I would say half of our customers are repeat customers, which is
Wow.
great for a business that's only a couple of years in. Um, and the cool thing I think about what we've been building is that it's really been all organic. We're not doing like ads, we're not doing
Yeah.
influencers, we're not doing like any of that stuff. And that's the way that I wanted to start building my business is just through word of mouth, just through connection. Because I think it's so much more powerful than, blowing up your Instagram with all these followers and all this
Yeah.
stuff that doesn't end up converting at the end of the day. And so it's been nice that we have such a community that's so willing to share, and come back for new and fun and exciting products that we roll out every quarter.
Yeah. All right. Can we talk profit margin for a second here? Because again, in the digital education space, profit margin's usually really, really big, and people will take their profit and invest it back into themselves, personal development, other courses, coaches, etc., or team, and starting, to pay out some overhead there. With a product like you have, the profit margin is completely different. I have another girlfriend in the product space, and she recently sold her car so that she could actually have enough money to buy inventory. And so I thought, wow, that's so interesting. It's such a different approach. And I know both of you and her have not raised capital. So you're still doing everything by yourself. The money that you're making, you're putting back into the business. Is it scary? Does everything go back into the business? Are you open to talking about, are you taking a salary? What does that look like?
Yeah. So for product-based businesses, it can be, and there's different instances for everybody, but most product-based businesses, you have to put a lot of capital in upfront to actually have inventory to sell. Because developing a product, manufacturing a product, it takes a while to do so. It's not something that you can really pre-sale without, you want product in people's hands. People expect product in their hands quickly. Amazon has completely changed the game for all of us small businesses. Like, we are hustling to try to get stuff in your hands as quickly as possible. And so when you talk about margins, like, most of the money you make is going, as you grow and scale your business, the money you make is most likely going to be invested back into the business to pay for inventory. And so we talk a lot about like gross margins and net margins. So gross margin is really like basically what you're selling your product at for retail, taking out your cost of goods, and then that is your gross margin. So I always coach any of my product-based clients you have to at least have a 75% gross margin, especially if you're ever going to do wholesale. And I'll explain that in a minute. But then you have the 75% margin, but you have to then invest in all of the costs, right? So like the advertising, the marketing, the photography, everything has to go back into scaling your business. And so you typically invest all of that money back into it. I didn't take a salary at all the first year of business. Every single penny I reinvested back into my company.
Wow.
I'm finally taking a salary now, but it's so much smaller than what I was getting from a corporate job. But that's how you scale. That's how you grow. Like, you have to also be mindful of like not always investing all of your money back into your growth. It's different for product-based businesses. Like, you have to remember to pay yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of product-based businesses don't do that because they're trying to scale and put money into inventory. So yeah, I always advise like at least a 75% margin on product-based businesses, because if you're ever going to do wholesale, your retail costs are essentially cut in half.
Wow.
So you knock your retail off by 50% in order for you to sell your product at a 50% off retail to other retailers, for them to then make that 50% profit back in your business. And so if you have less than a 75% margin, you're not making much at the end of the day if you're doing wholesale.
Yeah. What are your thoughts around something like Kickstarter? Because I know you said with a physical product, like the customer wants product in hand, but I also know so many people that have started physical products through something like a Kickstarter, where you get that money, you get that proof of concept and proof of demand, and then people are rewarded with the item once it's sold, or once it's created, I should say. What are your thoughts on like a Kickstarter Indiegogo for someone who doesn't have the capital up front?
I think Kickstarter is a wonderful way to raise capital. Not only you're like creating community around a product that hasn't even launched yet, and creating community before you launch a product is incredibly important. So I think Kickstarter is a great way to go. I mean, there's things like angel investors that you could go after, friends and family rounds of pre-seed funding. There's so many different ways for you to raise capital before you even start your business. And I think any of those avenues, ideally, if you do like angel investors, finding somebody who's willing to help you build business in areas that are not your strength are kind of the way that I suggest people go. But Kickstarter, that is an incredible way to raise money and create community at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. It really gets people to buy in on the vision. I mean, I've been a part of so many Kickstarters that have come to fruition. And then when it comes in the mail, everyone knows Passion Planner. I was part of their Kickstarter like a decade ago. And I used it for 8 years. I used Passion Planners, and it was so cool to like be a part of the whole thing. Okay, let's chat consignment for a second. So if you didn't know this, I don't know if you knew, but audience members, back in 2008, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, I had an accessory line, very cool name, called Glaze Accessories.
I love it. I love that.
And they were handmade purses. So I was actually weaving my own fabric and then making these purses. And so they were one of a kind pieces. And so inventory was obviously really difficult because I was making everything myself. Plus I was working alone aside from my mom helping. I guess I could say I hired her. I didn't pay her though. So she was just helping. But we actually were in a bunch of boutiques and we worked off of consignment. So consignment is this idea, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but back my understanding was like my purse lived in their boutique, maybe 6 of them. And if someone bought it, then we would deal with the money. But I didn't have to pay for it to be there. I didn't have to stock them with inventory. There wasn't like a contract of I needed X amount of items in the store. And they also they would say it's allowed to sit here for X amount of weeks or months, and then you have to take it out if it doesn't sell. So do you think that consignment is a good idea for someone with a product at the beginning? Did you do that at all?
Yeah, so I would say consignment is a great way to start getting customer feedback and retailer feedback on your product line. When you first start out with your business, so in the first couple of years, first year, like whatever, you want to get out there and get feedback, especially from retailers. If being a retailer is something that you're really interested in, getting your product on a shelf in any way, shape, or form is a great way. Make sure like when you're doing consignment, you're getting at least 20%.
Yeah.
You know, they're only taking 20% of your sales. But once you shift and you start to scale, having inventory sitting at locations that isn't paid for can become a struggle. It becomes kind of a struggle to manage how much inventory you have. So like if you're doing taxes at the end of the day, like understanding what your assets are, where your assets are sitting, understanding like how and how much you need to restock. Consignment can become a hassle.
Yeah.
Once you start to grow your business, because like, let's say I have 15 different consignment stores out there.
Yeah.
You don't know how much is selling because you don't have visibility to the sales. You're not really sure like when they need restock unless they're calling you or emailing you asking you to come in and restock. And your inventory is kind of sitting out there without you having eyes on it. And so I always suggest, yes, if you can't find retailers that will purchase something at wholesale, that do consignment. So the perk of consignment is that you'll make a little bit more money because most consigners take 20 to 30% of your sales versus wholesale will take 50% off of your retail in order to purchase the inventory. The pluses of wholesale is that you know exactly where your inventory is going. When someone places an order, they can place it through your online shop. Your inventory gets decremented. And it's just a much cleaner way for you to manage that inventory and manage your cash flow.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both. It just kind of depends on the business and where they're at.
Yeah. I know when we were doing that, I'm extremely gritty and resourceful. I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not, but the stores that were local to where I lived, I would walk through at least once a week and I would have conversations with people and I'd play dumb. Like I didn't even tell people it was mine. So I was get that market research, but also talk to the people that were working at the store. And if things weren't moving, if they weren't selling, then I would ask if I could like change the display or I'd change out to a different purse and I'd move them around the store and stuff. So I was constantly changing and iterating to see if we could get more traffic to walk by. And gosh, I mean, I only had MySpace at the time and Facebook. So to think back now with Instagram and all these other tools, I'm like, gosh, I would be pushing people from my own platforms to go to those stores and asking if I could do pop-ups and, you know, wine nights and stuff like that and whatever. So thoughts on the difference, or can you explain the difference between retail and then direct to consumer?
Yeah, so retail or wholesale is kind of what we call it, versus direct to consumer. So if you think about, it's really just at the end of the day, the profit margin that you're making, but there's also upside. So when you think about selling something directly to your consumer, if someone goes to my website and buys a perfume, they're paying $78. If I'm selling that exact same perfume to a wholesale account, to a retailer, to a boutique, to a Saks Fifth Avenue, to a Sephora, they're only paying half of that, so $39. So literally you're losing $39 of retail sales if you're selling something to wholesale versus selling something directly. So for us, we do a mix. We try to keep our wholesale sales and direct to consumer sales 50-50 to then net out around that 75% profit margin as much as we possibly can. A little bit lower than 75, but you know, we try to get around there. And so we do a lot of pop-up markets that are direct to consumer because I only have to sell half the amount of inventory to a direct to consumer than I do to a wholesale account. But I will caveat that with getting your product into retailers or wholesale accounts, they're literally salespeople for you, right? So that's why so many people do it. And so many people want to get into retailers. It gets so many more eyes on your brand that you're not actually having to physically be there to sell your product in. And so it's always, to me, it's always good to have a healthy mix of both.
Yeah. Plus they're buying more than one when it's a wholesale
Yes.
deal. So there's
Yes.
a
Yes.
bulk element to it,
Yeah.
which then hopefully would get in the hands of more people. So I don't really know that there would be a better, we say better in quotes, but do you think it's better to have like one SKU or many SKUs when you're starting off with a physical product?
I would start smaller because I think when you start a product based business, really, if you start any business, this is probably very similar to the coaching world. At least the coaching that I've experienced for myself is that you put product out there, you hope people love it, but you don't really know what the customer feedback is going to be. So, especially in a product space, you're investing $75,000 on 50 SKUs, and customers may only resonate to 10 SKUs. And so
Yeah.
then you've got all this leftover inventory that you end up marking down, and then you start to work and change your branding and your strategy. And so starting small, really understanding what the customer feedback is, what retailer feedback is, and then really honing in on those best sellers and then making different iterations of those best sellers is really most of the time the sweet spot for again, a way to manage your cash flow and your inventory in a great way.
Yeah.
You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by sitting on a ton of inefficient inventory that's just sitting there at the end of the day that's not going to sell.
Yeah. Something that we practice in business and that we teach our clients is, of course, thinking ahead. So we're recording this podcast at the end of January. I would say for anyone listening, it's literally January 26th. If you're just thinking about Valentine's Day right now, you could say that you're actually a little bit behind. I don't want to stress you out, but as a business owner, you probably would have wanted to have thought about Valentine's Day
Yeah.
and any sort of marketing or promotion or special deal like a good month ago, at least. Yeah. So with you, it takes 6 to 9 months to get this product to market. How far ahead are you actually planning things like launches, holidays, promos, new things, knowing that it's going to take? Because again, I could jump on tomorrow and be like, hey, I'm hosting a masterclass. I don't really need to do anything in between. Yeah, landing page, emails, whatever. What's the gap of time for you? How far ahead are you planning?
This is wild. It's going to blow your mind. But okay, so like holiday just ended. And so
you're already there.
while I'm already doing holiday.
That's crazy.
And most wholesale retailers, big retailers, purchase a season an entire year ahead of the season that it's actually happening. So it depends on the retailer. Some are 6 months, some are 12 months out. When I was managing PetSmart, like we were placing buys for holiday right after holiday finished so that we were able to use the holiday analytics to understand what we wanted to repeat, what we wanted to test for the next year. Immediately after, we had our hindsight reviews, determined what buys we wanted to place, and then we went after it and placed those POs. So yeah, we're a year out. And so you have to be buttoned up and planning.
Yeah.
If you are a small business that wants to grow into a big business, you have to be ahead of it because retailers are expecting that you're prepared for a season when they want to come and buy. They want to buy when they've got their pocketbooks open and ready to spend. So yeah, we're a year out.
Wow. Mindset question for you. Do you personally struggle at all with sort of being present then when you're in the business behind the scenes working on something from a year from now, but also we're 2 weeks out from Valentine's Day, which probably is going to have some sort of, cute little promo, whatever marketing. Is it hard for you to be present and also be in the future?
No one has ever asked me that question. And that is so insightful, Jess, because it's something I struggle with every single day.
Is it?
Every single day. And it's not only after the ruptured ectopic and me realizing that I was moving through my days in a way that was a little bit hazy. And so one thing that I do every single day is taking a pause in my days, looking around me, taking in the beauty wherever I am in that moment, taking a breath, being grateful for the things that are happening today and not focusing so much on what's going to be happening a year from now. The caveat to that is I need to work on the things that are going to be happening a year from now or they're not going to happen. And so it's very hard, I would say, but it also you almost have to be present in the current moment to understand what's working and what isn't, to know what changes you want to make for a year from now. So it's really kind of a mix of both. But yeah, I struggle being present a lot, not only because I have ADD and I just struggle with that in general, but because I'm always working so far ahead, I always have to kind of bring myself back and be like, okay, what happened this week? Am I present for my customers? Am I making the analytical decisions that are correct for a year from now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I struggle with that a lot, like a lot.
Do
Yeah.
you have any tactical things that you do or like tools that you use to bring yourself into presence?
Yeah, for me, um, it's really creating like a self-care ritual and slowing my mind down. And so things like taking a bath, like bathing, it for me is like a slow and intentional ritual and process that I do to kind of bring myself back into center, into
But do
awareness.
you light Cayla Gray candles when you bathe?
I light Cayla Gray candles. I use Cayla Gray bath salts. I play a Cayla Gray playlist. Like,
Ooh.
I've got that ritual down. You guys will, all this stuff is coming out. You'll see it. Or I go for a walk and like, I don't listen to podcasts. I
Yes.
literally don't. It's just silence, just
Yes.
silence. I'll go for a car ride in complete silence. Because so many things are thrown at us all day, every day, all day
Yep.
long, all day, every day. And I think it's so important to have those quiet moments to yourself,
Yeah.
to hear yourself think, to like listen to your gut feeling, to feel your gut feeling and
Yep.
feel the things in your body and like recognize them. I also do 2 times a year alone trips by myself
Yes.
to like really, really beautiful places in nature, to again recenter myself. I shut my phone off. I'm like not on social media. I do a ton of like manifestation journaling. Again, do the self care rituals, the bathing. For me, fragrance is like connects all of it together.
Yeah.
Every time I do like my semi-annual alone trips, like I'll bring a new scent with me so that every time I smell that scent,
Oh,
it
you
kind of
think of that.
brings me back to that moment.
I love that.
And it's like it's such a beautiful ritual to me, and like there's something so special about just being your alone out of your own element,
Yeah.
that forces you to just breathe and
Yeah.
look at things so differently.
The silence. It's
Yes.
painful. It's really
Yeah.
hard for us.
Yeah.
I went through a season, I think we all do recently, where it was probably about 6 months. I'm like a 2 podcast a day girl. Obsessed with books. I read like 50 books a year, 30. I shoot for 30 to 50 a year. And for like 6 months, didn't touch a book, wouldn't listen to a
Yeah.
podcast, didn't even really want to put music on. But if it was going to be something, it was music.
Yeah.
And I just had this moment of like season of I just need to stop consuming. It's like
Yes.
exhausting. I want
Yeah.
to come back to the self-care, but just a quick piggyback question on sort of the struggle or challenge with being present and being in the future. As a visionary, as a founder, as a creative, as someone who's literally creating products, do you struggle at all with, I won't call it shiny objects, but new ideas and having these awesome ideas, whether it's a new scent, a new product, a new line, and then knowing that it's also going to take 6, 9, 12 months before it actually comes to fruition? Do you struggle with dancing between that? Because I know for me, I'm like, I feel like every other day I'm like, I want to do this. I want to build this. I'm going to start this. I want to do this. And I can't always, but I also can move a little bit faster because I am putting out education.
Yes, 100%. But I will say this. I have a very strict planning process, and I think that comes from my corporate background. Is that every October I sit down and I plan my entire next year. I plan out the things that we're launching. And so I stick to that calendar, and I try not to let the shiny objects too much come into play because I have my calendar, I
Yeah.
have my action plan for the year. I have the things I need to do to hit the sales goals that I am going after. And we're already in process on making and developing all of these things. But every once in a while, there'll be like a beautiful opportunity. You have to be strict in your planning, right?
Yeah.
To stay focused. Otherwise, like you're never going to get anything done. But you also have to allow open space
Yep.
for opportunities to come in. Otherwise, you're kind of shooting yourself foot by putting blinders on and not seeing all the beautiful things around you that could be opportunities for your business.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. Like I stick to my planning. I'm crazy. Like I'm obsessed with Excel. I know that really dates me, but I love it. I love a good Google spreadsheet. I stick to that. I love Asana. I stick to all those things as much as I can, but also like even just over this last year, the different types of collaborations that I have been able to create just by keeping space open has been really beautiful. And I think
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not left some space open for magic to happen.
I love that. The structure creates the freedom. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gives you have the intentional space in the structure that you've created so that things can come in. And every time you do a collab, I foam at the mouth and I just wait. I don't know what it would be. So audience, as you're listening, if you have an idea, how in the world would it make sense? What could we create together? Because every time I see you do a collab, I'm like, I want to do a collab, but I don't know what that would like. Why would that matter? What would that mean? So, but then again, you did it with candy and it was about money and it worked. So,
Exactly. We can make a scent. I mean, because scent is so closely tied to memory, it's like, what is the ritual that you're wanting to create for your customers? Like, what is the moment that you're wanting to bring them back to every single time? What is the thing you want them to remember? And I think all of the different collaborations that we've done have had that moment in it.
I think for our clients, so much of it is, and I don't know what the scent necessarily would be, but belief, right? And it's like,
Yes.
it's the be do have. So when people are saying yes to your product, when you're making money, when launch is going well, it's so easy to show up confidently and be excited and speak about your product confidently. But it's in the moments that you're not getting the result that you want. That's when we spiral into like limiting belief and self-doubt. And so I find that in our coaching programs, that's usually when people are like grasping for help. They're like, help me, I'm in a rut, I'm stuck, I'm not feeling confident. I got 3 no's, nobody's reaching out, no applications. So we have them do these dance parties. We make them get back into state. And so we have them, whether it's jumping on a trampoline or doing a dance party, and we have a playlist that we use and we bring them back into state. So it's the be, do, have, act as if, and show up as if it already is coming in. The money's here, the clients are here. So I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. What would that ritual be? Like, what could we create that there was that sort of scent that brought you back up to that heightened state? So kind of like the power pose before you get on stage.
Yes, I love that. I already see it. I mean, like diffuser oil that like energizes and uplifts you. Or, I mean, there's so many things that we
So
could do
good.
together. Yeah,
Okay.
it's so fun.
You heard it here first. We're planning for 2025, ladies and gentlemen.
Collabs that can get done 6 to 9 months easily. But yes, oh my gosh, that's so funny. 2025.
Yeah, 2025 coming in hot. Stay tuned. So let's talk about some new things that you have going on, because I know extending the brand into just this like true whole with like a W, holistic self-care line is kind of where we're going right now. So you were talking about your bath and your candles and your bath salts. So let us know what's coming up.
Yeah, so for us, like as I've moved through the journey of creating this business, the connection that threads its way through is really like creating a really deeply personal ritual around self-care. And for me, like fragrance is always, like I was talking about, the different ways that we use fragrance to bring back like beautiful memories for yourself. And so Cayla Gray is evolving. By the time you hear this, like we will have launched a completely new rebrand. Yes, I'm so excited about it. And it's really about like us believing that self-care is like a deeply personal ritual that's like really a self-celebration. And so we want all of our luxury products to help you go a level deeper on those self-care rituals and bring you back to the moments in time that you need to recenter and reground yourself. So yes, we're launching a whole new look and feel, and then we'll be rolling out a bunch of new self-care items, journals, bath and body products,
Journals,
robes, blankets, slippers.
What?
Face masks, like literally everything, lip balms, like everything that you would need if you were placed at a luxury resort for a couple days by yourself. Like, what are all the beautiful things that you would bring with you that just make you feel like so luxuriously special? Is where we're headed. So I'm super excited about it.
I'm so excited. Are you going to have to change your wallpaper behind you?
Yes, I'm going to have to paint it.
Oh, did you paint that?
Yeah, I did.
Wow, you're so talented. Oh my gosh. All right. So we dove into a lot of things, and I feel like I just started and we can keep going. But before anyone pops off and we get into our final little round of questions, where can people find you? How can they learn about your products? How can they, usually I say, how can they work with you? How can they buy from you? And just what do you have for us that you want to share?
So you can find us at caylagray.com. It's CAYLAGRAY.com, or we're all over Instagram at Cayla Gray Co, CAYLAGRAYCO. We've got seasonal scent releases every quarter. So by the time this comes out, we have a new version of our orange blossom scent. I added a little bit of fig notes to the orange blossom this year, and last year it sold out within like 3 days. And so we made more quantity this year, so we shouldn't sell out. But I'm super excited to hear what people think of like the new iteration that we made of this scent. So stay tuned for that, and then keep like subscribe to our email, because that's where people find out about the first the new items that we're rolling out and the new scents that we've got going on.
Awesome. And we'll put all the links in the show notes to the website and
Okay.
to your Instagram and everything.
Yeah.
Are there any events that you're going to be at this year that you want to shout out that people can come and actually see you?
I think one thing that's super exciting that we're doing is opening a shop
Yes.
in downtown Phoenix.
I'm so
So
excited.
I'm so excited about it. So that's going to be open around the first or second week of March if I can hustle and do renovation in time. So yeah, so come see us there. You can come in person, smell the beautiful scents if you're local in Arizona. And then we'll be at a bunch of different pop-ups and markets and stuff like that that we'll announce on our Instagram channel.
Awesome. All right. You ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yes.
Well, I have to ask this one. What's your favorite scent?
My favorite scent is petals. I made
Okay.
petals for myself. It kind of reminds me of the alone trips that I started taking a decade ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a beautiful floral that smells like clean laundry. And it always kind of brings me back to those special moments alone.
Yeah. It's so interesting how everybody's scent is so different, like their sense of
Yeah,
smell
yeah,
that, yeah, that wouldn't have been my pick.
yeah,
It's so funny. I think water
yeah.
is,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
spa vibes, cucumber.
Yep. I
Mm-hmm.
love it. It's just
I love
so
that one.
light.
Yeah,
What'd you want to be when you were a kid, when you were going to grow up?
a veterinarian.
Me
I'm
too.
obsessed with animals, but like I started going down that path and like I found out I'm too sensitive.
Yep.
Like I there was like a movie, I think it's like Water for Elephants. Like I cried the entire time and I'm like, this is not my path. Like I'd be a hot mess every day. So
I
yeah.
know. I know. Oh my gosh. Favorite movie?
Oh man, favorite movie. I don't really watch a lot of movies. Um
You can pass.
yeah, I think past there's a Jason Statham movie that I really like and I can't the name of it. I can't think about it right now.
All right.
So pass.
Are you currently reading anything? And if so, what are you reading?
I'm currently reading Colleen Hoover books, and then there's a book called Exit Rich that I'm reading as well.
Ooh, that's
Mhm.
exciting foreshadowing.
Yeah,
I know. And we committed to reading fiction books this year, and I have not started
yeah,
yet. So I'm glad to hear that you have.
yes. I read fiction before I go to bed every night. It just
That's
helps like
awesome.
slow my brain down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Best piece of advice that you've ever gotten.
Best piece of advice that I've ever gotten um, was from my dad, and it really goes back to like always being in integrity. He taught me that anytime I leave a situation, a company, a relationship, um, he gave me the analogy of like when a ship leaves shore, it can either leave gently and softly and leave small wake, or it could leave abruptly and harshly and leave like crazy like wake with waves that like impacts everybody around you. And you want to be the person that leaves slowly and gently and with integrity and respect and leave as little bit of a wake as possible.
I love that.
Yeah, that was always his advice to me. So everything I do, I try to come back to, does it feel aligned with my integrity?
I love that. What a beautiful visual. Final two questions. Our $50,000 question. If I were to cut you a check tomorrow for 50K, how would you use it for the business? You could split it up, one lump sum, but what would you do with it?
I would probably invest in developing custom like molds for my candle vessels,
Cool.
um, or develop custom molds for just different types of packaging. Something that's out there that people haven't seen yet is where I would invest that 50K.
Yeah. And I love your packaging, which I also shamelessly have here. So this is one
I
of the
love it.
candle. I know this is one of the candles and it just slides right off and
Yeah,
it's just so nice and cardboard and it's just beautiful. All right,
cheap,
last and
cheap.
final question. We name the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe that we are always evolving and growing and our businesses are a reflection of that growth. So what is your next either personal or business evolution?
Um, a few things. I am working on developing a program app sort of thing that helps small businesses manage their production and raw material tracking because I found that there's a gap in the market with that. Like most of the large companies cater to large companies and miss the small businesses. So I would say that's an evolution I'm working on creating for my own company that I'll roll out to other companies. And then me personally, like as I grow, I really need to learn. I'm working on setting boundaries with time, blocking off fully open days to allow space for things to come in versus cramming and packing my calendar every day with to-dos. Those are my
Well, I
evolutions.
appreciate for being on your to-do list today.
Mhm.
Oh man, Kelly, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you. I feel like every time we sit down and talk about your business, I learn so much and you just pour into everybody around you. And I adore you as a friend, but I love you as a business owner. And I'm just grateful to be in your world.
I had so much fun today. It was such an insightful conversation, which I don't know. It's such a great way to like start your day off. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. All right, folks, as always, if you love this episode, the best way that you can give back to Kelly is to tag her on social media at Cayla Gray Co. Tag me as well. I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what some of your biggest takeaways were, some of your favorite moments, some of your ahas. And of course, be sure to check out all of the links in the show notes so you can go get yourself a clean candle, perfume, bath salt, something, because we've got a whole new line coming out and I know I can't wait to try it. As always, friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.